It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Thank you for being with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thank you, Chad Erickson, for that wonderful introduction. We got a busy 60 minutes ahead, which will include a conversation with Clint Hurdle, former Major League Baseball manager, former player, currently a scout in the Rockies organization. We'll talk to him about a whole host of issues surrounding Major League Baseball, an extensive conversation with him and myself and Sam Yarnell, who joins us on the show. A lot to get to from the world of college sports, Sam, and that includes a national championship game. It was close, we could say that much. So we had a close game. I didn't think it was a particularly good game when neither team is able to get above 40% shooting in a national championship game, and these are your two best teams. Kind of struggling with that one. But Florida wins their third national championship, 65-63, Sam. And if you had told me 65-63 is the final score, that Walter Clayton would be held to, 11 points on 3 of 10 shooting, I would have said Houston wins the game. And ultimately, Florida, like any good team, having to play basically the style for much of this game that Houston likes to play, which is sort of a muck it up, get down in the mud, defensive battle, is still able to win this game. And that's the mark of a great team, no matter how you slice it.
No, you're exactly right, Jason. This game to me was a tale of two completely different halves. And I think in that first half, you saw Houston play the game that they needed to play to win the national championship. And, you know, when you can do that through 20 minutes, it's great, but you got to do it for 40. You were exactly right. This was, I don't know if I'd say it was necessarily a bad game. I'll choose to say it was a defensive masterclass from both teams. And you know, that's what we were expecting out of a Houston team, that's kind of been their MO this entire second half of the season and into the tournament. But I don't know if any of us were expecting that out of a Florida team who really stepped up on the defensive end, especially on a night like you mentioned, where Walter Clayton did not produce the way that they needed him to. 8 minutes to go in the second half was when he made his first field goal of the game. Started with a big old donut, 0 for 6, 0 for 7, somewhere in that neighborhood. But hey, when it came down to it, when push came to shove, this Florida team made the plays they needed to, and that's exactly what you expect to see, Jason, out of a team that's more talented 1 through 12 than a Houston Cougars team is. This Florida team was simply deeper. They played in a better conference. They were more familiar with better competition than this Houston team was, especially coming off of that miracle win against Duke that a lot of people, I think, said Houston may have treated as their national championship, being down, 12 in that game, 16, whatever the case is. At the end of the day, Florida stepped up. They were the better team talent-wise, and they get it done on the floor in that second half.
Yeah, and they were the better team talent-wise, and you feel for Kelvin Sampson, who at 69 years old, one of the best college basketball coaches of our generation, and you don't know how many more opportunities you're going to get if you're Kelvin Sampson. To try and get over that hump and finally get a national championship. And you watch this final possession, which we have up on the screen for the audience right now watching. If you're listening on the podcast, sorry, you're not going to see it. But if you're watching, you'll see it on the screen. And I'm just trying to figure out what the hell they were doing in this last possession, Sam. We'll freeze it right here. You've got, nobody in the paint, which is where this team makes a living. You've got nobody in the paint as we roll it forward. You've got guys all standing behind the three-point line, and you had 17 seconds. It wasn't as if it was a fire drill here. You had tons of time, and I just don't know what they're doing in that final possession. What the hell? I would love to know what Kelvin Sampson said in the timeout versus what was actually executed, which we watched, which was nothing.
Well, Jason, and I think it's even more confusing when you think about the prowess of this Houston team, especially when it comes to designing plays, even in this tournament alone. I don't remember whether it was the Gonzaga game, maybe the
Yeah.
Purdue game for Houston, but at some point during this tournament, they run this elaborate inbounds play. Maybe it was the Purdue game, maybe it was to win the Purdue game. They run this elaborate inbounds play and score the basketball, and that's kind of when your eyes opened up to this Houston team as, oh, we knew they were physically talented and defensively talented enough, but hey, look, they can get it done offensively and they can draw up a score whenever they need. Obviously, that didn't play out, and I'd be interested to see what, an NBA, or not even NBA, but a familiar college basketball or basketball in general coach or player would have to say about this, because obviously with the time left and with how Florida's defense had been playing, you wonder if they're trying to run some sort of penetration action, some sort of draw them out, and then let one guy shoot through to try and get a quick bucket, just needing a two. But at the end of the day, when you can't even get the ball inside the three-point line, none of that matters. The Florida defense clamped down when it needed to. And watch the passes at the top of the key from Houston with about 7 seconds left. They're expecting them to be. I think, to make a football analogy here, Jason, I think it's Steve Spagnuolo-esque. It seems to me like Florida could have been showing something all game only to not use it until the very last possession when they knew they might need to. Just next level coaching from the Florida coaching staff. And again, when you're that much more talented through and through, you end up the national champion.
Billy Donovan won a couple of national championships. Now Todd Golden has won his first at the age of 39, Sam. Todd Golden is a national championship head coach, and to think about where the season started for him, the Title IX investigation that took place, and the sordid details that sort of leaked out from that, which he was ultimately cleared of any violations, I guess you could say, to now being a national championship head coach. And where do you go from here at the age of 39? He'll have his pick. He could stay at Florida and continue to do what he's doing and build upon there, or he might have some other opportunities.
8th youngest head coach of all time to win the or to lead a team to win the NCAA tournament. Youngest since Jimmy V. Like, that's how long we're talking about. It's been, kind of the old boys club in coaching. All these other guys on this list coached, back when TV was black and white. Bob Knight, Fred Taylor, Harold Foster, Branch McCracken. Who? So yeah, it really is incredible to see Todd Golden and what he's doing with that University of Florida program. And I think, Jason, just thinking back recent history in college basketball, your Brad Stevens at Butler's, right? Young coaching is really, there's something to be said about it in college basketball. It really is important.
Yeah, it is. And Todd Golden, now a national championship head coach, and there's no reason to believe Florida can't be in another position. I haven't looked at the odds for next season yet, but no reason that team can't be in a position to obviously be very successful next year as well. All right, we're going to switch gears, do some baseball. Clint Hurdle on the other side. More college sports to talk about later in the show. We welcome you back to this Tuesday edition of SportsWrap. I was looking forward to this for a few weeks now, even longer. We were trying to set this up with Clint Hurdle, who is the former MLB manager, player, managed with the Rockies and Pirates. And he's got a great new book out. If you get a chance, go and grab it. It's a quick read. It's called Hurdle-isms, Wit and Wisdom from a Lifetime in Baseball. And Clint Hurdle is our guest on SportsWrap today. And it's such an honor and a privilege to talk to you. I met you. True story. I met Clint Hurdle in 1994. I was the bat boy for the AA Colorado Rockies franchise in New Haven, the New Haven Ravens, and you were a roving minor league hitting instructor. And that was the first time I ever met you. And you were a gentleman and great to be around then. And it's amazing that 31 years later, it's like this full circle moment where I'm talking to you now. What do you remember about sort of not just the days of being a roving minor league hitting instructor with the Rockies, but the grind that it took from a coaching and managerial standpoint to get to that that level in the major leagues.
Jason, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Number one. I'm in Spokane, Washington today. I'm actually starting my first visit of my deployment into our minor league system. So this week it'll be Spokane, next week it'll be Fresno. And it always stirs up a lot of wonderful memories of my minor league time playing, coaching, managing. In retrospect, the time in New Haven was very unique because we were sharing the field with Yale University.
Yeah.
Our initial locker room was over in the athletic facilities at Yale. So it was almost like a Legion ball structured daily workout because we would drive our cars over to the university. We would the players would dress inside. They'd drive cars back over to the park to work out, and to play a game. So there was driving back during the day. I can remember the first day we showed up for games, Rick Matthews and I, who was our minor league pitching coordinator at the time, we went out and the mound was almost flat. It looked like a softball field mound. And Rick Matthews got me in a car and we drove to some True Value, Ace Hardware. I'm not sure where we drove to. We got a bunch of dirt, a bunch of tools. I think we went to a nursery as well to get the dirt. But Rick Matthews built the mound the first day we were in New Haven on the ballpark so we could play a game that night. And then we ended up putting the trailers out there. But it was a fun time. It was a good town. It was a good town for us to be in. You got to see a lot of good players come through there.
Oh, my God. Derek Jeter was in Double-A that year with Albany. Armando Benitez was in the Orioles organization. There were some good players in that league.
We had our Todd Helton, I think, was in that league.
A couple of years later.
He
might have been the next year, but yeah.
A lot of good players, a lot of good time. Tough league. But it is nice to revisit those memories from time to time because they're the ones that, the emotions that come with. That's what make memories last. I think the emotions that come with it. And when you're building something new, we were an expansion franchise.
Yep.
Nothing comes easy. You got to share a field with a university. You got to build your mound. You got to do it. And then when you look back in retrospect, where it's come from, and now that Double-A part of the Rockies organization has now morphed into Hartford,
which is one of the most successful. It's one of the most successful franchises in minor league sports right now.
It is the social media presence they have, the ballpark entertainment, the food, the field, the facility.
Yeah.
And obviously it's in a rough part of the city down there that it is slowly helping the city revitalize as well. So Hartford's a good place. If you haven't been to Hartford, watch the Yard Goats, you need to come out and see them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let me ask you something. You talked about how we just revisited New Haven and you mentioned Hartford. I'm in the middle of writing my own first book. And what I'm finding is I'm learning things about myself that either I forgot or didn't realize. Did you have that sort of process with Hurdle-isms as you go through and start putting this together? Do you start to realize things about yourself that maybe you didn't before you went through this process?
I think I revisited a lot of emotions, and then I revisited a lot of lessons. And sometimes they were painful, sometimes they were successful, sometimes they were euphoric, sometimes it was sharing with others. The one thing I did need to go back and do is I had to call people and say, hey, I'm writing this book, and here's the memory I have. You were in it. Does this sound right? Am I playing this out right? Because the last thing you want to do is throw down all the way you remembered everything happening, because sometimes, as my wife reminds me all the time, Carla reminds me, I have a tendency to embellish some of the things I remember. And the main point in me writing the book, and I think anybody writing a book, is you want to get it right. You want to get the facts right. You want to get the thoughts right so people can hopefully plug into those emotions you're sharing, those lessons you're sharing, or the failures you're sharing, so they take the journey with you.
How long of a break did you take between retirement and getting back into the game in this current form that you're in?
I was fired the last day of the season, 2019.
Yeah, so I was 19. All right.
Then I actually, in the 1st of November, I interviewed for a position with San Diego as a hitting coach. And I was offered the job. I mean, before I landed back from my trip to San Diego, AJ Preller had a contract in my email box, a 2-year deal. It kind of caught me off guard because I was just going to hoping to go back and talk to my wife about what I said, what we're thinking. And then there it is. Here's an opportunity. I sat down with Carla and I explained the next step. If that was one we took, we'll go to Arizona. She goes, oh, okay, we haven't been in Arizona in a long time. Spring training out there again. Okay, well, we'll figure it out with the kids. They're in school. And then San Diego. Oh, yeah. Clint, can you go any farther west? I go, no, not unless it's Hawaii. She goes, so, all right, we'll figure that all out. As we walked through this process, my wife, Carla, said, we'll figure it out, I don't know, 10, 12 times. And I stopped at the end of it, and I thought to myself, maybe I need to figure some things out. So a couple weeks later, I came out and said, I'm just going to put the uniform in the closet. I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to sign a lifetime contract with a home team. I thought that sounded cute, right? And I did take 2 years off. I was out 2 years, Jason, before I came back.
All right. I want to talk to you about life back in baseball in this current iteration for you. Clint Hurdle is hanging out with us on the show. He's got a book. It is fantastic. It is called Hurdle-isms, Wit and Wisdom from a Lifetime in Baseball. More to do with Clint Hurdle, the former big league skipper and player, here on SportsWrap. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. Hanging out with Clint Hurdle, former MLB manager and player. Sometimes I think people forget Clint as Sammy Arnell joins the conversation as well. I think sometimes people forget that you had a successful playing career, and you have these two things that both of them define you with Major League Baseball, but both are so completely different. Give me a sense as you sort of went through writing this book, Hurdle-isms, for people who don't know, Wit and Wisdom from a Lifetime in Baseball, from Clint Hurdle that we're talking about today. Give me a sense in sort of the separation between player and manager, how you combine those two things in this book.
Well, I think you compartmentalize them as kind of you tell your journey. You try and explain your journey. And there was the part, it was education, it was high school, it was minor league ball, it was pro ball. And then it was, as I shared in the book, sometimes people would say, so you're going to retire. I retired at the age of 30, and I didn't retire. I tell people, only good players retire. People stopped calling me to ask me to play. So that's a different way for your career to end. And I actually kicked off my coaching career by threatening to continue to play with Steve Scriver, our minor league player development guy with the Mets. He kept asking me about managerial opportunities, and he started at the bottom of the ring. I just played 10 years in the big leagues. The last 3 years were hard. I went to camp as a non-roster player the last 3 years. And this is after, the cover of Sports Illustrated, a World Series trip, a couple playoff things against the Yankees, the A's, championship teams in Kansas City. And then you're at the end of it, you're a non-roster guy, 3 state springs, but you make the team each year in spring training as a non-roster guy, which is not easy to do. But I tried just to walk that transition through, yes, you're a player. And you know what? Once you're a player, the only people that really remember that you're a player sometimes is you. Because there's more guys playing. There's a different group playing. There's a different group to watch. There's a different generational, time lapse going on where they're gravitating to their players. My players were Brooks Robinson, Al Kaline. My favorite player was Al Kaline. Second favorite was Brooks. My third favorite was Tony Oliva. Then as a player, you have your favorite. George Brett, what a favorite player there. I loved Amos Otis. Amos Otis took care of me in a way that not many people ever knew. But, to play with Pautek, to play with Frank White, to play with Hal McRae, all the men I was fortunate to play with, Johnny Bench, Ozzie Smith. It's crazy. I was blessed beyond measure of the experiences I had while in the uniform and the time I was in the uniform. And one of the things I do share is, when I played, I really feel I was blessed to play in the perfect time for me. And when you talk about the players I was playing against, when you can keep throwing out one name and people know who you're talking about, the time I played, there was all kinds of lefty. Okay. Manny, Thurman, Reggie, Sparky, Goose, Vida. You can go on and on and on. It's one name. One name is thrown out and you're like, bam, okay, we know who you are. You don't see that or hear that as much anymore. So I just try and revisit those things, not to romanticize so much. It's just to kind of give them a time walk back through what was going on and what has gone on in the game of baseball, especially in my life. And I had a couple coaches along the way, and their names that not a lot of people gravitate to. But Dennis Papke was a hitting coach I had in the minor leagues. I got sent back down. Gordy McKenzie was a coach I had in AAA when I went to get sent back, but then came up and he was a big league third base coach for us as well.
Look, having spent time around minor league baseball, I could definitely appreciate that it is a very difficult game to play, and the mental struggle that goes along with trying to achieve that certain level of acceptable whatever it is in terms of just trying to be the very best player that you can be. You said that this appealed to you, this job in scouting and working with kids, and what about that is so attractive to you? Because you probably, look, in this day and age of managers always getting other opportunities, you certainly were successful as a manager. You probably could have, hung around and politic to try and become a manager again. You mentioned the opportunity to become a hitting instructor with the Padres, be a hitting coach. Was there a reason you decided that after 2019, the time was then to not do that anymore, to not be in that rat race, that hamster wheel?
Well, yeah, it was basically because of my family. My family had done nothing to make sacrifices. My wife, Carla, has been instrumental in any growth, maturity, success I've had since we first met. We've been married 25 years. She has sacrificed. She has made adjustments. She's figured things out on the fly. She's audibled more than Peyton Manning. She's done some incredible things. And it was just like, man, it's just time to lay it down. I had 2 young children in high school. Little did I know, by laying it down in the middle of November of 2019, the rest of the world was going to lay it down with me in the middle of March when COVID hit. So then I find myself homeschooling 2 kids in high school. And you know what? As scary as that was, and as weird and hard times, how rewarding it was, because I was home. There wasn't any other options. As Carla would remind me all the time, your swipe key doesn't work at PNC anymore. You got nowhere to go. You need to figure things out here at home. And it was good for me to be home and to actually revisit how valuable my wife has been to myself and my family. Because for every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks of every month, I get to check out. We at that time, we had Christian, who was in high school. He was a sophomore. Madison, our special needs daughter, was a senior in high school. My wife never checked out. She never took 2 weeks off a month to go on a road trip. Whether you're managing, whatever you're doing, she shows up, posts up every day. She's one of those unheralded heroes. She was a first responder for our family. And to watch that every day and to be a part of that every day for 2 years, I thought I appreciated her. I thought I loved her unconditionally. But all those feelings I had for her grew over the 2-year period being at home. And I probably added a little bit more to her plate than she really wanted, because when I went back to work, guys, there was no crying at the house. The flag didn't go to half mast. Dad's leaving and can start traveling a little bit again. So I learned so many valuable lessons being at home and watching my wife navigate our family day and their kids' day, and my day, that it was very meaningful. It was very meaningful.
The name of the book is Hurdle-isms. Clint Hurdle is our guest, the former big league manager with the Rockies and Pirates. More to talk about with him. Don't go anywhere. SportsWrap continues, and so does the conversation with Clint Hurdle, former big league manager and player with the Rockies and the Pirates. Clint, you have the distinction, Clint, of having managed 2 franchises that have really struggled here. Obviously you did a great job with the Pirates as a manager of the year, managing the Rockies, all of that. But in terms of the overall sort of trajectory of those franchises, you look at where both have been in recent years. Some managers go and take, Dave Roberts is managing the Dodgers. Some guys just take high profile, successful jobs that are already in situations that are built to win. What was it about those two jobs that appealed to you as opposed to trying to get one of those maybe major market jobs with a team that's spending tons of money and is a perennial success as opposed to the teams you took over in Colorado and Pittsburgh?
Well, one of the things I use frequently, and it's in the book, Hurdle-isms, is there's two kinds of people in this world: those that are humble and those that are about to be.
Yes.
I never thought of myself.
You posted that on X too, and I've read that. Yeah.
I never thought of myself as, I need to be this kind of manager. It wasn't until late in my playing career that I ever realized coaching could be an option, because I stopped playing. I started watching more and learning more. And then once I started coaching, I got a minor league managing opportunity. And I realized, you know what? I actually think God prepared me to be a minor league manager through all the different challenges and things I went through as a minor league player and a major league player. There wasn't much a kid could come in my office and ask me about that I hadn't already walked through. And I definitely could tell them some things that won't work. I don't have all the answers on what it will take for something to work, but I can share with them my failures, the way I chose to do some things and how that's got no shelf life. That's got no track record. That will not work. I could actually say it. But once I started managing, I did realize then that I really liked being a part of something bigger than myself. So I was the hitting coach in Colorado when our manager was fired. And I actually thought Dan O'Dowd was coming to my house that day to fire me. He called up and said, "I got to meet you. I'm coming to your house." No general manager comes to the hitting coach's house. I don't think this ever happened in the world of baseball. But he called me up and said, "I need to come to your house." And I was like, so I called my dad and said, "Hey, Dad, we were not playing well. It was early 2009. I called up and said, "Dad, the GM's coming to my house." He goes, "Well, what's that all about?" I said, "He's coming to fire me. We can't hit water if we fell out of a boat." So Dan came by, and then all of a sudden he sits down and he starts telling me, the struggles, the challenges. And he goes, "By the way, earlier this morning, I had to make a hard decision. I let Buddy Bell go." I went, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I let the manager go." And so I'm thinking, okay, now you're going to let the hitting coach go. He goes, "And I'm here to really ask you if you'll step in as the interim manager the rest of the year." And I went, "What?" I didn't even say what. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't spit. I just froze. And I said, "Excuse me." He said, "Clint, I'm here to ask you to step into the manager's job." And once I shook myself, I was like, "Yes, absolutely. I'll do whatever I can to help."
If a team called you tomorrow and said, "We have a managerial opening," there's no thought to you to reconsider getting back into managing?
No, that's changed over the years. I would have a conversation. I do think I have one more push in me if it happens organically. If not, I would have no regrets on never managing again. I managed for 17 years in the big leagues. I was blessed. Well, that's without winning a World Series, which is somewhat of a feat, because obviously we built something well, because people aren't going to keep you in that position of ownership when those organizations are worth $1 billion and more if you're not doing something right. And for two service periods, one 8 years and one 9 years, to stay in the place, I think I've shown the ability to help build a brand.
How did you feel about Major League Baseball's handling of Pete Rose and now the conversations of taking him off the ineligible list and giving him an opportunity to have his day in Cooperstown, even though he won't really have that opportunity? It'll be more for his family. How do you sort of process that whole thing and the way it's played out?
Well, for me, and I only speak for myself.
Sure.
It's been a journey of adjustment. I played against Pete. I've talked to Pete.
Yeah.
I've done shows with Pete. I know Pete. Other people know him way better than I do, but I know Pete. And he was the kind of guy that you wanted him on your team and you didn't like him at all if he's on somebody else's team. And away from the park, you might not like him at all, but there's a lot of people that did like him. So the fact that the gambling issue, was so huge and so well documented. For a while, I was that guy that, it's Article 21. You break that, everybody knows that. I've heard that every year. I heard that. And then as I got older and stepped back and watched some things and watched the game go the way it's gone, and now you can bet on about 2,700 different things during the course of a ball game, and there's gambling houses right on the same site as the ballparks. And you can see behind home plate when the signage flips and it's this or it's that, or I say put him in. I mean, I've flipped 100% because for me, at the end of the day, look what he did on the field.
Clint Hurdle. The name of the book is Hurdle-isms. I already got him to commit to a version 2.0 because he already mentioned one during this conversation that he could put in it. Make me a promise. First of all, you got to come back on the show because I could talk baseball with you all day. You become a manager again, we're getting you on the show. Love it. Clint Hurdle. Congrats on the book. Enjoy Spokane, Washington. We'll talk to you soon. There is more to get to from the world of college athletics, and we will get to it next. Good to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes. Sammy Arnell and I get back to things here. I thought this was really interesting, this house settlement. And when I first read it, I was like, house settlement? What's Congress doing getting involved? And then I started reading it, and I go, wait, different house. Hopefully a fix for college sports. We talked about 4 number 1 seeds being in this NCAA tournament Final Four. And a lot of people freaked out. Oh my God, this is why we've got to fix college athletics, NIL, all of these different things, the transfer portal, you name it. Well, now, I don't know if we have a fix yet for the transfer portal, but we do have some sort of process in place with this House settlement, which is named after the lead plaintiff in the case, Grant House, where the NCAA has agreed to pay roughly $2.8 billion in damages to past and current athletes to settle 3 federal antitrust lawsuits, claiming the NCAA's rules have limited the athletes' earning potential in various ways. Now, the big side of this, I know it's not the $2.8 billion, is that in exchange, the NCAA is going to be allowed to limit how much each school can spend on its athletes per year, which is effectively a salary cap. Now, this is in place for the next 10 years. And when I think of it that way, I think of it as a collective bargaining agreement. Now, I know nothing was bargained here and that a court had to sort of rule on it, but we're talking about for the next 10 years, there's going to be a salary cap in place essentially of $20.5 million. It's intended to keep teams from using their boosters to sort of circumvent that and sort of jump through hoops to get around that. I'm still interested to see how they handle enforcement of something like that, Sammy Arnell. But at least there is some sort of effort being made here, an attempt to try and rein in this sort of wild, wild west that we live in college sports, where some teams could spend more than others. And you wind up with a situation where maybe some people believe that's why you wind up with 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four.
So this actually brought something to my mind that, quite frankly, may have been on other people's minds, and it may be a theory and it may be disproven, and that all may be all well and good, and I quite frankly haven't looked into it very much. But this is how it reads to me, just noticing a certain line in this, right? The $2.8 billion that Jason mentioned. Who's it going to? It's going to athletes who weren't able to profit off of NIL, right? Now then you look back at the kind of timeline as to how all this developed when NIL was legalized, I guess we can say. It's become very apparent to me that the legalization of NIL was kind of a way that the NCAA could foresee this House settlement coming to pass eventually and say, well, look, if we start letting them get paid now, we can just avoid all these other settlees on this settlement, right? We're not going to have as many co-plaintiffs. So that to me is kind of how this whole NIL thing came to be, looking back on it with obviously 2020 vision now. Just an important note on that 2.8 billion. Now, with regard to the collective bargaining ideal, this is where I got to stand up for the student athletes of the world, because collective bargaining agreements are great. And like, yeah, they lock us out of sports sometimes and that sucks. But at the end of the day, they protect the players. An important part of collective bargaining agreements is that they are agreements that are bargained on collectively. If there is an oversight body made up of senators and Congress people that are bargaining this with the NCAA, then it's not collective bargaining. It's bilateral arguing or agreeing in a trilateral problem. So I don't really understand why all of a sudden Congress and the NCAA think that they're going to settle this entire ordeal and they'll make a couple of rules and all of a sudden everything's going to be great. Because another thing that they are very clearly leaving out is how players are supposed to get paid. That's apparently going to be up to the schools. So what are you going to do? You're going to create more of a Wild West than you did when this whole NIL thing originally came to be. It's going to be juicy, Jason. We're in for a good one.
Well, I'll tell you, the other aspect of collective bargaining, what does it involve? Unions.
Right.
There's no union here. Yeah. There's no union. It's just a whole bunch of players at different schools, and that starts to get into the process or the idea of, do these guys have to unionize? Can they unionize? How would it take place? And again, it does in many regards turn something that was amateur athletics for so long and the only thing I've ever known it as, and it essentially turns it into another wing of professional sports. I mean, that's sort of where we are, Sam.
Yeah, it's actually funny as you mentioned that. I kind of thought back, like it feels like, and this may be different. I obviously am disconnected from college, have been for a few years now, but it feels like I was probably like one of the last college classes where I remember going to Spanish class and there were a couple basketball players in the class. I sat next to a couple of the baseball players in geology and stuff. That probably doesn't happen anymore, you think?
Probably not. Probably not.
There's no way.
But
there's no way.
But I'm just sitting here thinking, and I'm just thinking out loud in the final few seconds in this segment. Central Connecticut State University, bless their hearts. I love the Blue Devils, and I know a lot of people over there in the NEC. They're not spending $20.5 million on anything.
True.
So just as we were talking with Clint Hurdle about a floor and a ceiling and a salary cap, $20.5 million. Central Connecticut State University's not spending that across their entire athletics.
That's true.
Makes no sense. These smaller schools still aren't going to be able to compete. Odds and Ends wraps it up next. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Means Vladimir Lewisant and Kurt Heelan will be here. We'll have our usual NBA roundtable discussion with those guys. We'll find something else to talk about. Something will happen today inevitably. That's your tease for tomorrow's show. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms right now. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show while you head into work. You can also watch it over on Spotify and on YouTube. Check out the YouTube Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel for all sorts of great content. Our conversation with Clint Hurdle, you saw some of it today. It really was like almost an hour of talking with him. Yep. So we've got plenty of content from that that we will be dispersing across our socials as well. YouTube, though, is the main one if you want to see everything having to do with Sports Wrap with Jason Page. All right, without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for some odds and ends. It wasn't a loss last night to the Washington Nationals, but Shohei Ohtani almost hit for the cycle. Came a double short of hitting for that cycle. But alas, Sam Yarnell, your Washington Nationals beat the vaunted LA Dodgers last night.
I tell you, man.
Mackenzie Gore on the mound last night, too?
Yeah, he looked good. Obviously gave up the homer to Ohtani, but other than that, looked good. I tell you this, and I know I'm not going to wax poetic about my beloved Washington Nationals for too long because not a ton of people care about them, but the Nats are going to be good next year, man, and the year after that, and the Nats are coming. They played the Phillies really close that entire opening series. They beat the Dodgers last night. This is a team that won a series against the Diamondbacks. The Nationals are going to be good sooner rather than later. Shohei Ohtani's awesome. Shohei Ohtani's going to win the MVP every year until he doesn't, and he deserves to. It is incredible what we are witnessing. Again, I think, many people in the industry have pointed this out. Jeff Passan was, I believe, the one who coined it or whatever, but we're watching the Murderers Row Yankees. We're watching the modern day version of the Murderers Row Yankees. So appreciate it while you can. And if your team beats them, man, you have every right to get way happier than you deserve.
And that's why, and I might have said this a week ago or something like that. That's why when people are like, oh, is it good for baseball? Because my father used to tell me the stories. My dad used to tell me. The days of Sandy Koufax. People would watch just to see if somebody would get a hit because he was synonymous with throwing no-hitters. So people will watch just to see if somebody could get a hit off of him. It's going to be the same thing, I think, with the Dodgers this year. It's just going to be, can somebody actually beat them? Or are they going to win, 110 games or 115 games this season? But hats off to the Nationals for being able to get a win. Did I hear you say that Clay Bellinger of the Yankees, Cody Bellinger, of the Yankees, well, Clay Bellinger played for him too. I'm good with names lately. I've been really good.
40 years ago.
DJ Metcalf, yeah. Cody Bellinger of the Yankees. Did I hear you say the reason he didn't play in today's game for the Yankees was because he ate buffalo wings?
Bad wings. I guess Detroit, Michigan, not known for their buffalo wings. Yeah, that's tough. Kind of epitomizes the Yankee season so far.
Oh, my God. Stephen A. Smith has said he is keeping his options open when it comes to running for president, Sam Yarnell. Stephen A. Smith at the NAB convention out here in Las Vegas, where I am, where I'll be heading over to a little later today, not to be on any panels because nobody wants to hear anything I have to say. But Stephen A. Smith yesterday at the NAB convention in Las Vegas saying he is keeping it, loves what he's doing for ESPN, but is keeping his options open to running for president.
Yeah, all right, listen. I don't know when the general PR marketing world is going to understand this, but it's something I've believed for a while, and I guess this kind of just reminds me of it. Eventually, we as humans, the general population, we get very tired of hearing about something, and we want to just see that something or do that something. I'm really tired of how for 4 years now, we've heard about Stephen A. Smith running for president and this and that and this and that. Where's the campaign, dude? If you're really so serious about it, let's see the campaign.
Exploratory committee. Yeah.
I'm not interested. When we see that, okay, let's discuss. Until then, it's like, dude, your show should keep you relevant enough. Why do you need to do this?
I think it's the courtship. I think it's the fact that there are people in maybe in both parties, by the way, that are trying to court him, because I don't think he's really revealed himself one way or another about being a Democrat or being a Republican. And maybe that means he runs as an independent if he decides to run. And there is polling that shows him polling very high. So Stephen A. Smith might be appealing to Stephen A. Smith, but I think it's the courtship. I think it's the
Doesn't have a
being.
presidential
I think that
name.
it's being wanted. I think it's being wanted. And frankly, if he decides to run and he has one good debate, he could be president. That's the scary part.
He doesn't have a presidential name. President Stephen A. Smith doesn't have a ring to it. It's not like President Abraham Lincoln. President George Washington. President Stephen A. Smith just doesn't roll.
Doesn't roll off the tongue. Okay. He's going to do it for us. Thank you to Clint Hurdle. Thanks to you for watching. Thanks to you, Sam. We'll see you all back here on Wednesday.